Well, g'day everyone. I hope you're well, and thanks for joining us for another episode of CyberWins. We've got a special one for you today. Our guest today has spent nearly a decade securing one of the largest government departments in Australia, only to emerge and name his new firm after a samurai's dual-wielding combat style. Today, we're exploring the philosophy of two-sword security and why its founder once hoped that AI would be a fad that just disappeared. How's it going, William? Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
We've spoken a bit before we started this. I just want, if you wouldn't mind, just to give us a bit of a background, if you could just go into, you've got a lot of experience in the industry, a lot of work experience. Just tell us a little bit about your background, if you don't mind, just briefly.
Hayden, let me tell you about the interesting bit.
Okay, sure.
And how I got to where we are.
Yeah, great.
I've been in IT since, 1986. And like most security people, we're IT people. The key interesting thing that I'll tell you about is this. How did I get to where I am today? Simply, 10 years ago, I was a senior IT project and program manager. I said, it's time for a change. I get bored if I'm not learning. So I was at a lunch and someone suggested security, as in cybersecurity. It's probably a very interesting area to be in. You should consider that. So I actually didn't have any experience in cybersecurity. I did have a bit of a risk background, but not cybersecurity. So I thought, this looks all right. No training in that area. What I did was I took an empty A3 scrapbook, paper scrapbook. There's nothing electronic about this. And I started to do my own training and research on cybersecurity. And I would cut things out. I know we've got printers and we've got everything online. I'd still cut things out and put them in this book. And this is interesting because about 6 to 8 months later, luck favours the prepared. An opportunity came up at the Department of Education, and lo and behold, I got my first role in cybersecurity as the manager running our then nascent program. The point I'd make is this. I couldn't have got that job unless I could have demonstrated all of the learning and preparation I'd done. The other thing that's interesting, and I won't sell manifestation to you, in 1997, I'd been working for 11 years at Ford, and Y2K came along. I didn't know anything about it. But I realized within a week that this was probably a really good opportunity. And what I did then was I took an A3 scrapbook, and this was before the internet was really getting going, put all of my information about that. 3 months later, I ended up tripling my salary and kicking off my career in speaking and working in risk. So just there's a couple of parallels there, particularly for people who maybe, how do I get into the industry, etc. As I say, I'm not selling manifestation, but it's worked for me twice.
Beautiful. I love it. There's something good about that kind of analog approach sometimes. I think sometimes we need a bit of a detox. I say that I've got like 6 AI windows on their screens here. I've got an app that I've made up there with AI over the course of the last weekend. But just to the left of me, I've got a giant whiteboard and I'm constantly scrolling on that. So sometimes you do have to have that a little bit of a break. Now, you yourself are branching out and starting your own firm now, and it's focused on a similar area of focus that you had, obviously, the Department of Education and education in general, K to 12 as an area of focus, as I understand, potentially. Tell me, what made you think that you could probably do a better job at helping out that vulnerable area of the community from the outside rather than the inside?
That's easy. Well, it's easy. A couple of things. If you look at my history in this last, 8 to 9 years in security, that's all about being, as you said, on the inside of government. So I've been helping government schools pretty well exclusively. And I'm a big fan of sharing information, as difficult as that is with cybersecurity. So I thought, has anyone been talking to the independents? So I've spoken to a few independent schools and realized that there was a need there. Also, I do like helping schools. If you look at my history, up to almost 20 years in the department, all my time's been spent, a lot of it with school-facing projects. So I know schools really, really well. So here was an opportunity to use my skills to help the independent sector. I could go out, be my own master, if you like. The government schools are well managed from an internal program. They've got their program. There's always lots of work to be done. I thought I could go out and help them as well. And from talking to them, there's certainly a need there. And I've got some strong ideas about what can be done to help in that sector.
have to confess, in my time in an independent K-12 school, my first, and I really hope that my IT manager at the school is not watching, although he knows all about this. Mr. Linfoot, his name is. My first touch of cybersecurity was getting in trouble for doing bad things on my my network at school, which ended up actually, now that I think about it, giving my first IT job, because they said better that we just give you the password rather than you find them out. So I ended up working for them in the school holidays after I kept on poking holes in things. Oh gosh, it's pretty funny. I wish I knew the things I knew now back then. I could have probably caused even more trouble, but it's funny. I think yeah, it was kind of formative for me. It's interesting. I haven't thought about that in a long time, actually. It's funny, that school that I went to as well has come up as a customer for me as well, and I just had to bite my tongue. So, yeah, I knew their network perhaps better than they thought I did.
Very good.
Obviously, I've seen the light and work for the good guys now. I think maybe some of the working in the holidays was actually a punishment for the things that I did, rather than actually, paid employment. Now, you have a fascinating martial arts history. I know this is not, we're not talking about cybersecurity or IT, but I just have to know, two swords, as I understand, that's part of the Kenjutsu. Did I say that right? Kenjutsu?
Yes, correct. Kenjutsu is correct.
Kenjutsu.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. That's nearly 4 decades you've been doing that. Is that right? Or
how did you know this? Where's my privacy? This is incredible.
No,
so
exactly.
Yes, I am very impressed. I've had a long history with martial arts.
Yeah.
And I did architecture at Melbourne University, as in not IT architecture, but the real architecture.
The actual architecture in the 80s, right?
And I always say I got a degree and I got a wife, and I've still got both of those. Yeah. I ended up not working in architecture. I did for a short period. But while I was at uni and before I left school, I got a real thing about martial arts. And I did both karate and kung fu at university. But I ended up with an injury. And back injury still bothers me, and that ended up driving me away from it. Having said that, while I was there, I did get to like the whole idea and the philosophy around the sword arts, and as you say, Kenjutsu, the art of the sword, and in particular the art of drawing the sword as well. So that sort of always stayed with me. I still do a little bit of training with that, just an old timber sword these days. So, and the two swords came from, I mentioned Y2K earlier.
Yeah.
In 1997, the opportunity came for Y2K. I'm learning everything about it. I'm becoming the expert at Ford. And I said to my best friend, best man, who was also an IT consultant, I said, listen, there's an opportunity here. What about you come along with your skills? So the two of us came together and we worked as two swords. So I've had that name for a long time. Now he's retired. I'm still working because I love working. And now I've got my wife helping me as I set the business up, and she runs my customer relationship management. So my two swords are still different. It's probably my wife and I. But,
yeah, nice.
And I've always loved martial arts, and I love watching films. I dislike television, but I love watching feature films. Enter the Dragon is one of my favorite all-time films. Bruce Lee in that was just transcends everything. He was just fantastic. I'm honestly, Hayden, I'm fearful of what else you know about my history now. I'm really impressed.
Just don't look at the recent activity on your email address logins. Just ignore that page for the next couple of months, I'd say. No, I kid. And see, I thought two swords might be because Kenjutsu would use two swords, but you only use one sword at a time. Is that right?
Correct. So just one thing on that.
Yeah.
This is more interesting than cybersecurity. One thing on that. Traditionally, and I'm a Japanese martial arts type guy, despite the Bruce Lee connection. Yes, virtually all swordsmanship from Japan is done with a katana and one sword. Having said that, one of the most famous ever, the most famous ever swordsman from Japan was a fellow by the name of Miyamoto. I forgot his name now. He was famous for two swords. He used two timber swords or two real swords, one in each hand. And he's flying fellas left, right, and center. Very famous.
I've seen in art people having two swords on their belt on the same side, but I didn't realize that people would use them at the same time. Is that?
Yeah, it can happen, but generally not. They've got
Okay.
the short sword and the longer sword. They will generally, in proper fighting, only draw the longer sword. But
I
yes,
see.
you can use the short sword, the wakizashi. You can use that as well.
And then if you follow the One Piece animated series, I think there's someone that uses three swords. He's got one in his mouth. I'm not sure how close that is to reality, but
Yeah,
yeah, you've never dabbled with that. Yeah.
I can't handle one, let alone three.
Yeah, well, there you go. I'm sure you're just being modest there. Now, that's a big history in martial arts. Is there anything that you have learnt? I imagine the training must be quite rigorous. Is there anything that you would apply from your martial arts background that you have to the security work that you do now, kind of specifically or broadly in terms of a mindset or strategy? Or I know this is a question that I should have given you before, but it's
It would
just
have been nice, but
yeah.
let's go on the fly with that anyway.
Mm,
Obviously, you think about the things of discipline and training. Obviously that comes through. That's just a given.
mm,
I think what's more interesting is going back to the sword. There's a saying in Japanese, and the English translation is, we think about the sword as being a violent thing and a weapon of destruction, and you couldn't argue that's the case. But the true practitioners, the true samurai, transcended that and said, the sword that strikes down evil is the sword that gives life. And it's this philosophy about very much you and me, very much we're the good guys and we're out against the evil guys. And it is like that. Before we finish, you'll hear about something that's driving me to be an evangelist in cybersecurity, and in particular for schools when you hear my story. But so from the martial background, I'm very clear about our mission in cybersecurity, and your mission as a samurai, if you were good, it was defending the poor, right, and not abusing your ability where you could, obviously destroy anyone. Our job, metaphorically, with our sword is to strike down the hackers. They create absolute destruction and evil. You just have to look at some of the stories about people's loss of finance that happens to them personally. It destroys lives, for the sake of a few dollars that they're taking away from people. I've seen it firsthand, and it's awful. And, we need to work together as a team to be stopping that. So that'd be my martial thing, as our whole ethos about good versus evil.
I like it. I like it. And when I first applied for this job, even though I had just spent 5 years in the Navy, they asked me the classic question around, can you tell us about a time that you've been stressed? And I didn't think of any of the times in the military. I thought back to driving the inflatable rescue boat in surf lifesaving as a time that I was stressed. It was actually when I was being instructed, and my instructor broke his leg coming down on a wave badly, and we had to get back into shore, unlike the first time I had driven it. You've been doing surf lifesaving yourself, providing a service to your community for nearly 4 decades now, which is, congratulations on that. That's a fantastic achievement. You'll be getting your national service, an addition to your national service medal soon, wouldn't you be? Or no, I think you get them every 10 years after your 15th year.
I'm coming up to 40 years, so I'll get something from the club. I'm a life member of the club.
Yeah. Now, sorry, to get back to the question, is there anything that in your experience as a surf lifesaver, volunteer surf lifesaver, in terms of resilience or anything like that you apply to your work life as well, or is that covered by the more martial arts side?
Oh, I like the martial arts story there. I mean, I've done numerous things over the years to help the community. Not to blow your own trumpet too much about that. With lifesaving, with a lot of things, but lifesaving probably more so than many other charitable things. You get quite a lot out of it for yourself as well. So, for those listening to us here today, we haven't talked about it, but both of us are surf lifesavers. And so, but we're doing something for the community, but also we get our skills, our achievements. We get to go down to the beach and surf, and at the same time as protecting people, etc. It also builds our skills as well. So there's a lot that we get out of that personally. It's so translating into how that matches cybersecurity. It's probably, again, it's about a commitment of us doing things to help other people, which we are doing. Yes, obviously we make a living out of doing this, but it's certainly more so than perhaps other things you'd see in IT where we build a system or put something new in, right? It's directly protecting people. The perfect analogy, if you think about it, Hayden, is as lifesavers, we protect people, and we absolutely do, and we rescue people. We do those things. Most of the time, we prevent people getting into trouble.
Yes.
Sometimes we save them when they do. That's exactly what we do in cybersecurity. I've
Yeah.
never thought about that before until you've asked me that.
Well, I'm
Prevent if we can, rescue after the fact if we need to.
yeah, wow, I like it. I
I
hadn't,
like it too, actually.
I hadn't thought of it either. So it's fantastic. Great, awesome.
I might change my new security firm name to be, Life Saving Australia. No, I
Yeah,
can't use that.
two rescue tubes instead
Yeah,
of two swords or something like that.
yes, the viewers, we have these rescue tubes made
Yeah.
famous by Baywatch. That's right.
Yes, yeah, they're the things that they run with
I
in
can get some good
Baywatch.
ideas out of you. I'll have to talk to you length after this.
Yeah, nice. Okay, great. Great. Oh gosh, wonderful. I have to ask, just because I noticed on your LinkedIn page, on your banner photo and behind you as well, you have some art. Are you an artist as well, or?
Yes, I am.
Oh,
Yes,
nice.
I am. I've always drawn to some extent,
Yeah,
and you go in. The problem is, I'm not a full time. I'm doing it all the time. And look, art, like anything, or like tennis, or like anything you want to do, you need to be doing it all the time. So I go in fits and bursts and things.
yeah,
My old school in Victoria, Xavier College, they run a fair every year for charity. I end up doing a set of paintings for that each year, and they sell, which is very good. So
beautiful.
behind me, as you say, as a background, is it's unfinished, like most painters' work. It's
Yeah,
unfinished. Is a picture of Merimbula. Favorite
right.
place to go. The only thing with Merimbula is the weather's not quite as warm as where you are, North Sydney up through to Queensland is where I should be. But
Yeah,
absolutely love it from a paddling my surf ski, etc. So it's a great place. So that's Merimbula behind me.
that was a guess. I didn't get that one by research, but I noticed the art behind you and on your photo there, on LinkedIn. So great, awesome. Now, just looking back through some of the questions that I've listed for you, I want to start on the fact that this show is called CyberWins. Now, I'd like it, if you can, to tell me about a cyber or IT win that you've experienced recently that has given you that feel-good feeling. You know, a lot of the stuff we're looking at in the news and various places is quite grim about things that are happening. But is there anything that you've seen that has gone, okay, cool, we're starting to get it?
Um, the thing I think about, you say recent, it's not really recent. And this is, you're interviewing me, we're having a chat for our people who look at this. My cyber win personally, but also part of what's been done at the department, but straight away, my cyber win is about looking at a challenge I had in cybersecurity very early on, and turning that into something that helped the whole of Australia. And so what I'm talking about is, very early on when I was running our program, I had to manage the issue of third-party suppliers and the risk around them for schools. Okay, no problems at all. So I looked at this, and very early I said, this issue exists for every educational jurisdiction around Australia. So kind of moderately long story short, it was my idea. I got some partners in crime, Education Services Australia. I knew a guy down there very well, and he knew what Queensland were doing. We got together and we created, and it's still running today,
Wow.
a national process that does assessment of suppliers for all educational jurisdictions in New Zealand, Australia, and may go wider than that. That was a big win, because what that meant was, you've got a supplier that might be providing a school information system. They've only got to do one assessment, which takes some work, and then it can be used all around Australia. And for the jurisdictions, for the education departments, we don't have to do the work. It's been done for us because it's now run by Education Services Australia. So it's, this is an absolute win both ways. This was driven by Hayden. I shouldn't say this, but it's the truth.
Okay.
I have made most of my living. I've been a contractor and I've been a public servant. Just finished as a public servant. I've made most of my money in the last 20 years from a state government. My issue, and it's always been, is we in Australia are too small for state governments. Now, we're not going to go political here, but my point is, my mindset has always been, we really don't need state governments, and everything we do is just reproduced. We've got 6 police departments. We don't need that. And their IT systems, it's all repeated. One could do the same job. So that won't always work, but it will work a lot of the time. So that mindset says, when we're doing something, we need to share. Now, what we haven't done is, we haven't done this for corporate. So when you look at our corporate department, and in Victoria, there's, 12 other huge departments, or whatever it might be, they've all got a HR system, or they've all got a financial system, right? Okay, that's fine. If I've done an assessment of my financial system, it's probably used by departments all around the country. Let's start pooling and being efficient and sharing, et cetera, et cetera. So it comes from that mindset. That's my big cyber win. If you look at my career to date, it's been national process. It's economies of scale, shares information, all sorts of advantages.
Well, that's the thing. There's almost no excuse in this day and age to work in such silos. I find a lot of businesses struggle with it, especially multinationals and that kind of stuff, where, people are doing roughly the same thing times 100 different locations that they have, and that means that all of the people in there are all spending the same amount of time on doing that same thing times whatever it is. But if communication and the different channels were opened up, suddenly one person does that bit of work and 100 other people benefit. So I've worked with a lot of businesses that are struggling through that and addressing some of those issues in my own work that I do, allowing for greater sharing in the stuff that I'm directly responsible for here at NextGen and Exclusive Networks, and the it's progressing in leaps and bounds, and it's wonderful to see a community open up essentially. But yeah, lots of efficiencies that can be made, lots of taxpayer money in the Department of Education's instance not being used for possibly inefficient kind of methods. So yeah, interesting. A great answer indeed. Now, I hope you don't mind me saying, but you've been working for a while now.
Yep. Yes, indeed. No, not a problem. Not a problem.
And I imagine that over your years and decades in the IT industry and working generally, technology has certainly changed. I'd be really interested to look at when you're working at Ford and how the CAD and CAM assets or applications you're working on there have changed since the 80s. But I imagine that humans maybe fundamentally haven't. Now, I wasn't alive in the 80s, so I can't say firsthand. But do you think that human behaviors that still exist from the 80s are impacting security now? Or do you think that people have started to progress a little bit more? People's understanding of technology and adoption of technology is certainly going up. Do you think people's cybersecurity awareness is going up with it at the same level, or are we still struggling a bit there? I think there's probably, still some big gaps in the security systems around, especially potentially independent schools. I'm not sure exactly how they would work, but I wonder, are they working on their own networks independently in a way that maybe public schools aren't? Are you finding that we're catching up? I think I asked you about 7 questions in that.
I was going to say, I feel, it's like a job interview, which I don't do very well, surprisingly.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah.
And I ask you about 4 questions. I'm thinking, I can't remember the first one, but I look stupid if I go back to that, etc. Firstly, though, you started, Hayden, with a fundamental question: have people changed?
Yeah.
We could really get philosophical and religious, whatever. People never change, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The way we are personally, etc. Now, having said that, you then moved on to what's progressed through time. And you mentioned CAD CAM. You're all over my career for sure as well. Because for everyone out there, that's when I started at Ford. I'd worked as an architect for 18 months, 2 years, and then I moved into computer-aided design, computer-aided manufacture, and I was in that space for quite a few years. It's interesting at Ford though. And it's not anything like it used to be. When I started Ford in 86, we had about 17,000 or 18,000 employees. When I left them in 1997, 11 years later, we had about 9,000 employees or less. So I survived a few retrenchments there. And of course, that manufacturing is now gone, which is, I wish it wasn't, but it is what it is. Now, people and cybersecurity, you couldn't pick a more interesting topic, because it's really important. It's one of the most important things. And we talk about technology, and we're IT guys, and we'll always want to talk about tech stuff. People obviously are becoming more and more aware about cybersecurity. The question is, cybersecurity is becoming bigger,
more and more complex.
Yeah, and the crime around it is more complex and more damaging. So even though as a society, IT and non-IT, we're obviously becoming more conversant with this. We're obviously, are we keeping pace? Probably not. It's I've got to say, when you look at the statistics over the last few years, dating apps, scams, etc., the figures are not showing that we're winning on that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And you look at dating apps, not as an area that I've looked at, but it shows you the human heart doesn't change, our weaknesses and our needs in that area don't change, and they're making a killing in that space. So we've got a way to go there. On awareness is a topic. I just jump here because we'll miss it otherwise. I'm really keen. When I talk to schools, I try and keep things extremely simple. I want to make security simple because schools can't handle it being complicated, and it doesn't need to be. But awareness is really important because, firstly, if you take an organization that has done nothing in terms of cyber training around awareness and phishing, then you will find, if you run a phishing campaign on them, I have experience in this area, but I know the facts from across industry. There's nothing new in what I'm about to say. You run phishing campaign on an organization that's never been exposed before, and you will get 25% at least of people will hand over their usernames and passwords. Right? Wait, here comes the bad news team. If we then now run wonderful awareness campaigns, and we do all the things we should, and we've got them practicing phishing, and everyone knows what's going on, and I've got training on a regular basis and newsletters and you name it. After all of that, if I then attack the organization, they're still going to give away at best 5%. So I've gone from 25 to 5%, right? We'll give away their usernames and passwords. So you could say, what's the point of awareness in that I'm going to give away 5%? If you've got 1,000 employees, you've still got 50 of them are still going to hand over username and password. So you can't stop them getting in.
Yeah,
which is true. All right. But there's a couple of things for schools. Awareness is really important because if I go to audit you and you've had a breach, if you haven't done awareness, I'm going to take you to the cleaner. But that's not my big driver. My big driver is this. And I'll tell you the story when we get to it. We've got time.
Great.
I've seen what happens to individuals in schools when they suffer a significant attack. And it's all about hurting and damaging people permanently. So my bent on awareness, apart from the usual stuff we need to do, let's reduce the footprint. Going for 25 to 5 is not bad, but I'm still never going to beat on. My big thing about awareness for schools and for small businesses and for non-IT businesses is this. When it happens, and it will happen, it's not your fault. I want you to be in that mindset before it's happened. It's just business as usual. We got attacked. There was a fire. Business manager at a school, principal at a school. It wasn't your fault. I've got to start that message early, because if they don't have that, I know what happens. I've got people permanently damaged. I've got people who resign. I've got people who leave the industry as a result of something that wasn't their fault. That's my awareness campaign. That's what's making me an evangelist to prevent attacks in schools.
It's like a mugging. It's like blaming the person who was mugged.
Absolutely. Listen, I shouldn't. That's perfect, Hayden. That's perfect analogy. I was thinking about this a little while ago, and I haven't experienced this, but you hear about it, and it's dreadful for the women in our society, where you hear about a woman being sexually assaulted, and where we get to the stage where we have to, and we get hold of the perpetrator, right? And the victim is treated worse than the attacker. It's that kind of mindset. You're exactly right with your analogy. All right. The people who are the victims, and they're straight victims, they didn't do anything wrong, end up feel like I was responsible. It was my fault. And this is, I'm talking about organizations where it's not even their money they've lost. Can you imagine what happens at home What
Mm.
happens at home when someone is scammed, they lose their money, they think it's their fault. You can imagine where this goes. And I told you I absolutely love feature films, and I do.
Mm.
And there's a film called it's a recent one with Jason Statham, who I quite like. I'm an action kind of guy,
Yep.
right? And it's called The Beekeeper. And the
Oh, yep.
start, and you may or may not have seen it. Your viewers might have seen it. Have a look at that. At the start of that, it's so realistic because you've got a woman there who is scammed and ends up suiciding because of that, and that happens. We don't.
Mm.
That's
Mm.
us, the good guys versus the bad guys.
That's it.
Back to you.
No, no, of course. Well, I note in your recent posts actually on LinkedIn, you mentioned resilience more than security. So what you're saying checks out in terms of the resilience, internal fortitude, knowing it's not your fault. You've been attacked like anyone else. It just happens to be in the cyber realm. So a great point of view to have. I hope a lot of people take that to heart. You have been wanting to talk about something for a bit now as well, and I keep on asking random questions, but you have a more exciting story to tell, and I want to offer you the opportunity to do that now. I've been dying to hear.
Okay, we probably almost got there anyway.
Yep.
I think it has come up in discussions or thoughts.
Mm.
What's been an event that's been significant in cybersecurity, and for me, that event determining where I'm going. Okay, and the event's this, and it's topical for cybersecurity. I was in charge when, quite some years ago, I think it was 2021, we had a serious attack on a regional school.
Mm.
Very shortly, they got in. They're not stupid. They got in at the start of holidays. They were in there for 5 days. That's critical. Any time when there's been a breach and there's significant damage, the bad guys are there for a long time. They crypto locked and effectively destroyed the 12 production operating servers of the school. That stopped the school operating. Now, they did have school holidays to try and recover from that. They did take some sensitive data, and they also ransomware us. And of course, we don't pay ransomware. We're government. So that's fine. Now, that's all right. We got through that eventually. Here comes the point. And I was involved with that, et cetera. But it hadn't yet hit me, the gravity of what had happened, until sometime later. Some years later, I don't know, 2 or 3 years later, I was presenting. I will present to audiences, anyone that they'll listen to me because we're spreading a message about cybersecurity. I was talking about cybersecurity to a group of business managers. And during this presentation, one of the business managers, she got up and put her hand up. That's unusual. I know this group very well. I know schools very well. This group know me as well. There's a couple of hundred people there. And she stood up, and I let her interrupt me. I can handle that, no problems at all. And she stood up and said, William has just told you that school took 3 weeks to become operational again after the attack. She said, that's wrong. It took us well over 3 months. And it turns out that the business manager question, she had resigned from her role as a result of that attack, and she was now at a very small school somewhere else, way away from where she was. And that's why I didn't know she'd be at this event, because it wasn't even near that. And so things weren't looking too good, but she did finish, fortunately for me, by saying, I want everyone here to listen to everything that William Fleming has to say. So that was great. But I found out from talk to her later and what happened to the principal, etc., these people were damaged. So you only hear cybersecurity people say, oh, we've got incident response plans.
Yeah.
We've got backups. We can bring our network back up in days or hours or whatever. And that's great. And you probably do need that. But you can't fix my damaged people. So this has changed my mindset. I will not accept the position that they're going to get it. I will not accept the position that they're going to attack and destroy us and we'll rebuild and we'll be okay.
Yeah, the next day,
Here's my bent as I go forward with all schools that want my help, and it's this. I've told you, and I won't go back on this, Hayden, and that is I can't stop them getting in. And the reason is because my people always hand out some credentials and you're always going to be. But what I can do is be really good at detecting them early. Because if I can get them in the first hour or even the first day, I can probably stop the damage. So that's the thing I want to do. I can't stop them getting in, right? But I can, obviously, we all try to stop them getting in and all efforts are good. but I'm going to detect them early and I'm going to stop the damage. And also, when I'm talking to schools, I just have a few key messages and awareness. We talked about it before. So for schools, I'll tell you my 3 things. I'll give away my secrets, and they are my secrets for schools and for everyone, small business, anyone who wants to listen. And that is, number 1, hygiene. Do your hygiene. I can tell a whole story about hygiene, but basically do really good patching, really fast patching, be up to date, do really good, useful backups that match your requirements and test them. Do your awareness for the things that we've talked about, and monitor your network. And there are ways of doing this cost effectively, right? Monitor your network and we'll stop them before they do the damage. That's what's driving me. What's driving me for my net? I could be heading to retirement. When you're looking at me and saying, hey, this guy's not as young as me and I'm not. You said, what did you say you were, 38?
32.
32. You look, no, I'm going to say you don't look 38.
Yeah,
So
well,
you're
I look
32.
older.
You're 32 and I'm 64. Now, my maths is very good. I'm twice your age,
Yeah.
right? Theoretically, I could be heading towards retirement. No way, right? My anti-dementia trick is I love working. I love learning. I'm keeping going until the wheels fall off.
Well, that's wonderful. I mentioned to you before that I usually like doing shows that are an hour and a half long, but unfortunately we haven't booked in enough time here. But what that does lead me to say is that I'm very, very excited to invite you back to maybe do part 2 of this, or to talk more in detail. I definitely want to do that. I'm really excited to talk to you again more. I have to, though, for our listeners and watchers, wrap it up now. So I can't thank you enough, Will. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. I look forward to speaking to you again soon, and thanks for taking the time.
Thank you so much, Hayden. You were more entertaining than I was. Thanks for having me on the show, and I'd love to come back again.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate it.